A thing that's gone on, it seems like in this, especially this last year, ideology is more important than art.
Way more, certainly to the awards.
Yeah. And it's just, it's like, ideology trumps art. Ideology trumps individual effort. Ideology trumps good. Ideology trumps entertaining. You couldn't say shit if you had a mouthful, all right? And every bestseller, every play that was turned into a movie, if there was anything about it or anything, that's all going to be drained out of the movie. It's going to be weaned out of the movie. It's just the way it is.
Every best-selling novel, every stage play that made the leap to the big screen, if there's a hint of even a whisper of something provocative, it gets scrubbed clean, watered down, sanitized. That's just how the industry rolls. Now Quentin Tarantino lit a match under modern Hollywood during a searing interview with the always unfiltered Bill Maher, and the result was absolute gold. The iconic filmmaker pulled no punches, shredding his fiercest critics and branding them as sanctimonious virtue signalers. And woke phonies Ma never one to sit quietly, fired back with his trademark barbs, making sure the sparks kept flying for anyone who craves fearless, unfiltered commentary. This was a must-watch moment. Interview.
Before we run out of time, I have to say to you, besides the great entertainment, I have always really appreciated the way you pushed back when anyone tried to stifle you, shut you up, shame you, bully you. They tried it with the last one, with Once Upon a Time in the Hollywood, some bullshit about Margot Robbie doesn't have enough lines. And you do what I wish other people would do. Instead of apologizing like a little you say, I don't agree with your assessment.
Bill Maher has never minced words about his contempt for Hollywood's fixation on woke narratives. I've talked about it many times here, how the industry has swapped out rich storytelling for surface-level signaling, trading character arcs for trending hashtags. But amid the ideological haze that hangs over Tinseltown, a few powerful voices still cut through, and Quentin Tarantino shines among the brightest. Even Maher, one of Hollywood's sharpest critics, holds him in high regard. Why? Because Tarantino is probably defiantly old school. He doesn't cave to trends, doesn't deliver lectures, and remains untouched by the wave of performative progressivism sweeping the industry. He's committed to making movies that push boundaries and provoke thought, not just pat audiences on the back. In a creative landscape where most stick to the script, Tarantino rewrites the whole playbook. It's gutsy, it's different, and above all, it's a breath of fresh air. Interview.
There has become a thing that's gone on, it seems like in this, especially this last year, ideology is more important than art.
Way more, certainly to the awards.
Yeah. And it's just, it's like, ideology trumps art. Ideology trumps individual effort. Ideology trumps good. Ideology trumps entertaining.
There's two kinds of movies, virtue signalers and superhero movies.
This is exactly why Bill Maher holds Quentin Tarantino in such high regard. He's one of the few voices on the left bold enough to speak out against the absurdity within his own ranks. Tarantino doesn't dance around uncomfortable truths, and Maher recognizes that kind of honesty as a rare gem in today's Hollywood. We've all watched the entertainment world slowly shift away from imagination and narrative depth, choosing instead to anchor itself in rigid ideology and hollow virtue signaling. One of the most glaring missteps, the ill-fated Snow White reboot, a critical and commercial flop. Why? Because the creative team prioritized politics over plot. In a misguided attempt to avoid offense, they replaced the iconic Seven Dwarves with CGI creations rather than casting actual little people actors who've long embraced and celebrated those roles. It wasn't progressive, it was condescending, and that's the exact kind of performative pandering that Tarantino and Maher refuse to let slide. Interview.
Are you bullish on the future of movies? Because
well, look, you have to always look at.
Are we going to get back to that place?
Look, this happened. This comes in waves. This absolutely comes in waves. All right, so it's like, okay, just looking at the 40s. All right, that was during the wartime, but that's also the time that you had film noir, where you actually, even though with the Hays Code, you had these dark stories that were being told. But then after the war was won, then you had the 50s, which was the first of the completely homogenized decades, where you couldn't say shit if you had a mouthful, all right?
Let's pause for a moment, because Tarantino made a striking observation that deserves attention. He brought up the Hays Code, the strict set of moral standards Hollywood adopted in the 1930s to self-censor anything considered too provocative, especially Sexual content, before it ever hit the screen at the time, many viewed it as a direct assault on free speech and artistic freedom, a way to sterilize creativity in the name of moral conformity. Here's the twist: Tarantino argues that this kind of censorship has returned, but now it's not enforced by government edicts or conservative watchdogs. It's driven by today's ever-outraged social justice crusaders. These digital mobs wield cancel culture like a weapon, punishing any film or filmmaker who dares stray from the ideological script. Art is no longer measured by its vision or craft, but by how neatly it checks the right boxes. Directors hesitate, writers edit themselves, and studios crumble under the weight of online backlash. It's a new haze. Code in disguise, rebranded as progress, but just as stifling and dangerous as the original ever was. And then
And the 60s, pretty much from like 1960 to 1966, was the 50s part 2.
Right.
But then what we think of as the 60s starts in about 67, and that's when New Hollywood
Bonnie
comes
and
out.
Clyde.
Yeah. And that's an absolute positive response to the homogenized 50s.
So it's going to come back again.
Okay, and then it goes into the 70s, but then we went into the 80s.
All right.
And that's why you came up with politically incorrect, because that was the first. This is basically the 80s part 2, what we're living through right now.
Well, I'll just take one more go at it. There's going to be a new golden age. Please be there and part of it.
Now here's something that really stands out. Tarantino actually thinks Hollywood may be starting to purge itself of the woke culture that's gripped it for years, and if that's true, then all I can say is thank God, because frankly this era of performative progressivism hasn't just worn thin, it's become downright suffocating. Too many recent films feel less like stories and more like sermons, stripped of imagination and weighed down by political checklists and sanitized creativity. If Tarantino's right and the tide is finally turning, then bring it on. A revival focused on rich characters, unforgettable storytelling, and real emotional stakes instead of agenda-driven messaging would be the reset Hollywood desperately needs. Imagine cinema that moves us, surprises us, and even challenges us without lecturing us. That's the kind of movie magic we all fell for in the first place. But during his sit-down with Joe Rogan, Tarantino also dropped a troubling observation, one that adds another layer to this already complex conversation. Take a look.
And then there's like, okay, this guy or this woman is going to write a think piece in the New Yorker about my movie, or in the Los Angeles Times, or in the New York Times, and they're going to write some think piece about it, or on this website or that website, and they're going to go against it and talk about, oh, this is a retrograde vision, or that this is a regressive vision. Or Quentin has become right wing, and this movie has a right wing bent because of the way they, Quentin is identifying with Rick Dalton with hippies. He's that's how it's
Is that really a take that someone had, that you've become right wing because of a character in a film?
Even like a critic who liked it, A.O. Scott, goes, well, this whole vision seems more on the right than you would imagine.
It might sound wild, but this happens far more often than you'd expect. Many people, especially on the left, tend to judge every film through a sharply political filter. The second they detect even a hint of right-leaning ideas or conservative vibes, they lose it. Suddenly, it's no longer just a movie, it becomes a threat. They launch into furious attacks on the production, the actors, the writers, anyone connected to the project, for having the audacity to portray values that clash with their own. What often gets overlooked is that cinema isn't meant to exist inside an ideological echo chamber. Films are artistic mirrors reflecting society, its dreams, its struggles, its contradictions. They're not mouthpieces for any single viewpoint. Not every movie will align with your personal beliefs, and that's exactly what makes art so powerful. It challenges us, provokes us, and yes, sometimes even offends us. But to reject a film just because it doesn't pander to your politics is to completely miss the essence of what art is meant to do. Interview.
I mean, it doesn't necessarily make it wrong, make it bad, but it just seems like more on the right. Well, Rick is coming from a place more on the right, not me.
Yeah.
Per se, but I am telling the story through Rick's point of view. And then, they say something, well, how come they don't talk about, how come there aren't more black characters in the movie? How come they don't talk about the Vietnam War more? Well, basically, the movie takes place between 2 days. Okay, well, they didn't bump into Jim Brown, right, on those 2 days. All right, they saw who they saw during those 2 days. Well, they didn't have a conversation about Vietnam in those 2 days.
Exactly, it's long past time for social justice warriors and hypersensitive critics alike to grasp one simple truth: not every movie is meant to preach. Some films are made purely for entertainment, escapism, and sheer enjoyment, and that's more than okay. Others are designed to dive into serious, contentious issues. Both have their rightful place in the world of cinema, and not every project needs to carry the heavy burden of a moral crusade. What many forget is that directors are storytellers with their own unique visions. That vision doesn't always mirror their personal beliefs. It's often about exploring new perspectives, characters, and situations. When filmmakers are forced to cram social agendas into stories where they don't belong, it's not progress, it's artistic self-sabotage. Forcing a film to tackle political or cultural topics that clash with its core message only waters down its impact and kills its beauty. The greatest movies resonate not because they preach, but because they move us with story, character, emotion, and genuine authenticity. Let art be art.
I think you're correct. And the thing about it, though, is, look, those kind of like academic college think pieces, they're just fine. Like in a college situation, they make sense. I can take a book or a movie and come up with some argument that goes, that's like that's more of a subtextual argument about a film. That doesn't mean I'm right, but it means I can make my little argument,
right?
For the course. But it doesn't. But I have no illusions that that's what the director was thinking about.
In the end, Tarantino's perspective is a breath of fresh air, a powerful reminder that true art isn't about pleasing everyone. It's about provoking thought, entertaining, and reflecting life's raw, messy reality. He stands out as one of the few voices in Hollywood who refuses to bow to ideological pressure, earning respect even from his toughest critics, including Bill Maher. Whether he's calling out the madness of woke culture or defending his creative freedom, Tarantino champions the idea that filmmakers must be free to tell their stories without fear of cancellation. Not every film needs a political agenda, and not every director should be judged through that narrow lens. Hollywood may finally be stirring from its performative slumber. If this marks the dawn of a new era filled with bold, unapologetic storytelling, then count me in, because art flourishes where free expression reigns, not where ideological purity tests dictate what gets made. So, if Tarantino is right and Hollywood is finally waking from its woke coma, maybe, just maybe, we're on the cusp of a genuine cinematic revival. No more lectures, no more forced agendas, just great storytelling. That's the Hollywood we crave. If you're done with the nonsense and ready for real talk, hit that subscribe button and stay tuned. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. See you in the next